Welcome to this lesson on confused words and eggcorns. These are the errors that make you look careless in professional writing, and the frustrating thing is that spell checkers will not flag them. Why? Because each word is spelled correctly on its own. It is just the wrong word for the context. By the end of this lesson, you will have reliable tricks for the most common pairs, and you will know what an eggcorn is and how to avoid them. Here's what we will cover. First, the most common confused word pairs and how to tell them apart. Then, what eggcorns are and why these errors are so persistent. We will go through memory tricks for each pair, ones that actually work and stay with you. And finally, why spell checkers cannot catch these errors. The term eggcorn is itself an example of the problem. Someone once heard the word acorn and wrote it as eggcorn. It made a kind of sense to them, which is exactly how these errors work. They sound right, so people keep using them. Let us start with the four most commonly confused pairs. First, affect versus effect. Affect is a verb meaning to influence. Effect is a noun meaning the result. Remember, effect equals action. Both start with A. Effect equals end result. Both start with E. Second, practice versus practice. In Australian English, practice with an S is the verb, and practice with a C is the noun. You practice your skills. That is standard practice. The trick, verbs end in SE. You practice and you advise. Nouns end in CE. A practice and some advice. Third, principle versus principle. Principle means main or chief. Principle means a rule or belief. The memory trick. The principle is your pal. A principle is a rule. Fourth, complement versus complement. Compliment with an E means to complete. Compliment with an I means to praise. Compliment has an E like complete. Compliment has an I, like I like you. Now let us look at eggcorns. These are phrases where part of the expression has been replaced with a word that sounds similar and seems to make sense. Could have instead of could have. This happens because could have sounds like could have when spoken aloud. For all intensive purposes instead of for all intents and purposes. A scapegoat instead of scapegoat. And nip it in the butt instead of nip it in the bud, which comes from gardening, stopping a plant before it grows. The reason spell checkers miss every one of these is that each individual word is spelled correctly. Could is a real word. Of is a real word. The error is about meaning, not spelling. The only way to catch eggcorns is to know the correct phrase. Let us see these errors in action. The passage on screen has 4 mistakes, but a spell checker would say it is perfect. The new regulation will affect. We need a verb meaning to influence, so it should be effect. The principal concern. We mean the main concern, so it should be principle. The effect on small businesses. We need a noun, meaning the result, so it should be effect. Could have been predicted. This should be could have. 4 errors, and every single word is spelled correctly on its own. This is exactly why you cannot rely on spell checkers alone for proofreading. Here are 4 more pairs that cause frequent errors. There, and there. There means belonging to them. There refers to a place. There always expands to they are. If you can say there in its place, use the apostrophe version. Stationary versus stationary. Stationary with an A means not moving. Stationary with an E means paper and pens. The trick. Stationary has an E for envelopes. Discrete versus discrete. Discrete with a TE at the end means separate or distinct. Discrete with 2 E's together means careful or tactful. The trick. The 2 E's in discrete sit close together, like people being secretive. Insure versus insure. Insure means to make certain. Insure means to provide insurance. The trick. Insure starts with, I just like insurance. Let us find the Eggcorns in this paragraph. Should have, should be, should have. For all intensive purposes should be for all intents and purposes. Toe the line should be toe the line. The phrase comes from standing with your toes on a line, not pulling it. A mute point should be a moot point. Moot means debatable or no longer relevant. And nip in the butt should be nip in the bud, from gardening, where you pinch off a bud to stop it growing. Every one of these sounds close to the correct version, which is why they persist. And everyone would pass a spell checker with no errors flagged. Your turn. Pause and choose the right word. Question 1. The new policy will affect or affect overtime arrangements. We need a verb meaning to influence, so it is affect. Remember, affect equals action. Question 2. The principal or principal reason for the delay was funding. We mean the main reason, so it is principal. The principal is your pal, and it also means main or chief. Question 3. You should practice or practice before the assessment. We need a verb, so it is practice with an S. You are doing the action. Question 4. The team could have or have finished earlier. Could have is always wrong. It should always be could have. The contraction could have sounds like could have, which is where the confusion comes from. Let us recap. Affect is a verb for action. Effect is a noun for end result. Practice with an S is the verb. Practice with a C is the noun. Principle means main or chief. Principle means a rule or belief. Compliment means to complete. Compliment means to praise. Eggcorns are misheard phrases, like could have, a scapegoat, and mute point. And a critical point, spell checkers cannot catch any of these errors because every word is individually spelled correctly. The only way to catch them is to know the correct version. Memorize the tricks we covered today and always proofread with your brain, not just your software.